Wolf's Heir, A Journey Through Secrets and Legacies, unfolds a riveting tale that intertwines the lives of ordinary humans with a hidden world of werewolves. At its core lies Samara Tyler, a college aspirant unaware of her lineage's ancient ties to a powerful werewolf clan. The narrative begins at a college fair where she encounters Pietro Galvani, who reveals the existence of Lupi Lucania Universitas Scholarium, a university catering to those with unique abilities like hers. As Samara navigates the complexities of her newfound identity, she faces financial constraints that threaten her dreams. Meanwhile, Sebastian, a prominent figure in the werewolf community and Samara's estranged father, grapples with the dual nature of his role as protector and enforcer. He confronts Florence, Samara's mother, who seeks to exploit their connection for wealth, leading to a tense encounter where Sebastian ensures her silence with a substantial payoff. Samara's journey takes a sensual turn when she wakes up entwined with two enigmatic brothers, James and Jason, who are also werewolves. Their bond evolves into a complex mating ritual, challenging societal norms within their werewolf community. The brothers, both alphas, must balance their primal desires with the need to educate and protect Samara from the dangers lurking in their world. The novel delves into themes of identity, inheritance, and the struggle for acceptance. As Samara gradually uncovers the truth about her heritage and the responsibilities it entails, she finds herself torn between the human world she knows and the mystical realm that claims her. Alongside her personal growth, the story also exposes the hidden dynamics within the werewolf society, where power struggles, ancient traditions, and the looming threat of hunters create a tense backdrop. Wolf's Heir is a captivating blend of romance, suspense, and self-discovery, exploring the lengths one goes to protect family and the sacrifices made for love. With richly drawn characters and a meticulously woven plot, the novel keeps readers on edge, anticipating each twist and turn in Samara's quest to embrace her destiny without losing herself in the process. Chapter 1. Samara Tyler? She turned away from the UMass Dartmouth table at the college fair and eyed the well-dressed, silver-haired man in confusion. Yes, but what difference would it make to him? Moreover, how would he know her name? A smile lit his light brown eyes and he offered his hand. Pietro Galvani. Samara shook it. I'm afraid I don't recognize your name, she admitted. Her cheeks flamed at that. Was she supposed to recognize it? He laughed heartily. Nor should you. After a moment he composed himself and gave her a cursory up-and-down assessment. I have been talking to your counselor. His hand retreated. Mr. Michelson? You mean he actually does something? Quite. I notice you have not come to my table. I had hoped you would. Galvani made an expansive motion toward the far side of the room. You did. He tipped his head in agreement. Which one is yours? To her knowledge, Samara had already visited all the college tables that were suited to her choice of major. Well, all the ones I can afford anyway. Lupi Lucania Universitas Scholarium. A slight bow topped the announcement. Her mouth went dry and swallowing failed to wet it. Samara worked at clearing her throat. There are a few problems with applying there. Are there? Please, expound upon them for me. In the meantime, he waved her toward a few empty seats along the wall. Once they were settled, Samara took a moment to order her thoughts. The first problem is that I don't speak Italian, and I don't feel confident I can learn enough Italian in the next year to take college in another language. You won't have to. We teach classes in 10 languages, including English. You may want to learn Italian to interact in town, and we will assist you in that. But you don't have to do it to learn. Excitement lit in her chest at that revelation. Died just as quickly. Another problem? He guessed. Samara nodded. I can't afford Lupi Lucania. Even if I got a scholarship that covered educational expenses, I can't afford room and board, the flights back and forth. I can't afford much of anything. Admitting that galled her, but it was better that he know her limitations up front. His school was one of the most expensive in the world. Even if her parents could afford it, and they couldn't, her mother would balk at spending the money on her. And she certainly won't co-sign the loans either. But European university education is much different than it is stateside. We have several scholarships designed for foreign students. Those scholarships include everything from tuition and fees to books, room and board, and even transportation and living expenses. Words stuck in her throat. No matter how hard she tried, Samara couldn't spit them out. If you would like to take our entrance exam, we have one. Yes. Whenever. I'll be there. Galvani smiled widely. Then he offered her a cream-colored envelope with an ornate wax seal. Samara took it with shaking hands, stunned. 2 weeks from tomorrow, Miss Tyler. We will see you then. Without waiting for her answer, he was gone. Samara stared at the envelope, her heart dancing in anticipation. The wax was deep red, the imprint a howling wolf's head with a calligraphy-style ulus. Topping it. Please, she begged. I will do anything to get into this school. It was literally the answer to all her dreams. Not only would she be able to leave home, she would have all the financial support her mother had refused her. If I passed their exam, if it meant being accepted, she would spend every waking hour between now and the test studying. Sebastian didn't wait for Pietro to clear the doorway at the end of the college fair before demanding a report. Did you convince her? His oldest friend tipped his head in a respectful bow. Samara will be attending an entrance exam for the university in 2 weeks. To make a good showing, I invited 3 other high-ranking students from the county. They will, of course, not place high enough to be awarded the scholarship offered. A wry smile pulled up at Pietro's lips. Her mother will protest Samara attending. It wasn't a question. Sebastian didn't doubt the woman would do everything she could to dissuade Samara. She is a strong young woman, and the fur at the back of Sebastian's scalp went up in warning. And his eyes narrowed. One can smell the need to escape on her, if it means escaping her home life. I cannot imagine Samara will back down. Sebastian considered his friend's observations. The scholarship includes university break classes. She need not return home to that. He stopped himself from specifying his opinion of the mother of his daughter. Understood. It will be as you say. He waved Pietro away, rapt on the vision of his daughter. In the distance, Samara left the building through another door. She stopped, pulled the envelope Pietro had given her from her bag, and stared at it. After a moment, she placed it carefully back in her bag and smiled. There was a spring in her renewed step. Yes, it will be as I wish. At last. 2 months later. I said you're not going. Her mother repeated her protest. I am. There's no way you can stop me, Samara shouted. There wasn't. The scholarship came with everything she needed and more. You think? There was a challenge in her tone. I know I'll be 18 long before college starts, and I don't need any money from you to attend Lupi Lucania. What else could she do to stop Samara from going? Before her mother could retort, her father stepped in. Back off, Florence. She did well. Samara is going to get a better education than either of us dreamed. Her mother turned on him in a full fury. Shut up. She's not even yours. You have no say in this. For a long moment they stared at each other. Samara's heart raced and her head spun. She isn't serious. She can't be serious. Of all the insane things her mother had said over the years, this topped the list. What did you say? Is that true? Her father demanded. And you better not be fucking with me, whatever you answer. Samara backed off a step. She'd never seen him so pissed off before. She wasn't sure what her father would do. True to form, her mother didn't back down. I said she's not yours, and yes, that's true. He stood stock still for a tense moment. Samara, go pack your things. Anything important to you? We're leaving. Her mother reached out to grab Samara's arm, and she ducked away, shocked to silence, her world crumbling around her. Her father stepped between them. Her mother slapped him across the face. Hard. You can't take her. She's mine. Mine. I have no proof of what you're saying, and my name is on her birth certificate too. Even if you prove it, it will take you longer than the 4 months until Samara turns 18 to do it, because I can fight you that long at least. At her age, the courts will let her go with whichever parent she wants, and I am her father, whether you prove your claim or not. Her mother gaped, shaking her head, her eyes wide and wild. Samara, go get your things. He hesitated, and his gaze was nothing short of tortured. If you want to come with me, I'll be packed in 15 minutes. I'm coming. Don't leave without me. Please don't. Don't leave me with her. I won't. I promise I won't. Samara scooped the acceptance package off the table and ran for her room. He said to take anything important to me. With the life she'd known falling apart, it was one of the few things she had left that meant something to her. This, my father, and a few prized possessions. She slammed her door to the sound of her mother throwing something glass against the wall. Chapter 2. 1 year later. James and Jason rushed across campus and up into the administration building. A summons from the Alpha Maestro was a serious matter, and one didn't dawdle. When called to his office, James would worry if he and his brother had been on campus long enough to have pulled a prank on someone, but they'd hardly had time to unpack. What possible trouble could he and Jason have gotten into? They didn't even have time to introduce themselves to the Alpha's door guard. The old warrior wolf showed them in without a word. Pietro didn't rise from his place behind the desk to greet them. That could have been bad news, but he offered a strained smile. Well now, I see the troublesome Trudale brothers have arrived. As ordered, Alpha. Jason hastened to reply. James offered a quick tip of his head instead. Pietro stared at them, seemingly sizing them up. Just as James was preparing to challenge the move, the Alpha Maestro spoke. Your mate is coming to campus this semester. James snarled. As he'd feared, he and Jason were going to be mated to Christiana. So much for our hopes that there would be a stronger, higher ranked female a year or two younger than her. Come on. I knew this was coming. The two strongest young males, litter brothers, are expected to mate with the highest ranking female not related to them. We're fucked. She will be moving into the Alpha suite tomorrow morning. Of course she will. Where else would Christiana expect to stay? By the night. Mother, being mated to that foul beast will be hell on earth. Jason shot him a look of disgust that said he was having similar thoughts. This will be somewhat complicated, Pietro continued when they didn't offer comments. To say the least, Jason blurted out. Before James could apologize for his brother's outburst, Pietro was posing a question to them. What do you know about Samara Tyler? For a potent moment, the brothers stared at each other. James found his voice first. Who in the night mother's name is Samara Tyler? Tyler? Samara Tyler. The old woman's accent was a pleasant, lightly British or British colony derivative, and her smile warm. Instantly at ease, Samara nodded and offered her hand. She took it in both of her own. Ah, Bella. I am so happy to meet you. So am I. Samara blushed in the realization that she'd forgotten the name of the woman who would be meeting her at the airport. You may call me Marietta. Samara committed it to memory. Well now, come along. Marietta turned and looped Samara's arm with her own. She was shorter than Samara by almost a head and had the slight pouch of a belly almost all older women, even thin ones like Marietta, had. Oh, wait, shouldn't I? Samara motioned back toward the cart of suitcases and boxes they were leaving behind. No, the men will transport your belongings in the van. We will take the car back to your rooms and meet them there. A glance back confirmed two men in red jackets pulling the cart behind them. Sounds good. It did. After spending all day on a jet, thankfully in first class, which was a delight, only to arrive mid-morning in Italy, Samara was exhausted. She stopped short at the sight of the limo with the school crest on the door. Samara? Is there a problem? Marietta inquired. Does everyone get this treatment? So, that explained at least part of how expensive the school was. She chuckled. No, but you are. What is the American term for it? A VIP. First time I've been called that in my life, Samara admitted. Marietta frowned, as if the comment confused her. Samara slid into the luxurious interior. The leather seats cradled her in warmth, and she sighed. Marietta joined her, and the driver closed them in. They set off, out of the city and into the small villages and farms surrounding it. At first, Marietta pointed out the sights and imparted the history of the area. As Samara's eyes fluttered and dipped, the older woman fell silent. Sleep dragged her into darkness. Samara. Someone shook her shoulder gently. Samara. She opened her eyes to the sight of Marietta's smile. Sorry. Samara yawned widely, stretching her back and arms. She smoothed her blouse while she tried to get her bearings. Not at all. Take your time. That spurred Samara on. It wasn't like her to make people wait. And I'm not starting now. She pulled herself out of the limo, ignoring the driver's hand. He didn't seem offended by it. Once Marietta was out, he shut the door. If you need anything else, have Marietta call for me. Samara hadn't quite grasped that statement when Marietta waved him away. He was gone before she could thank him. The building they'd stopped at was nothing short of a mansion. Samara stared at it, visually tracing it from one long wing to the opposite one. That Accomplished, she focused on the cornerstone building standing a full 2 stories taller than the 3-story tall wings, and that was before one took into account the ornate gilded topper. "This is the dorm," she blurted out. "One of them," Marietta agreed pleasantly. She guided Samara toward the massive front doors. "This one is for VIPs." They ambled up the circular walk, Marietta speaking the entire way. Regina Hall was designed in 1890 and construction started that year. A large portion of it was destroyed in the fire of 1939. The entire hall was demolished, and then rebuilt from the original plans but with updated building materials. The wing to your left is the ladies' dorm on the upper floors. The music room, fencing room, and dining room are on the ground floor of that wing. The wing to your right is the gentlemen's dorm. The ground floor houses the ballroom, gymnasium with swimming pool and lounge. All ground floor amenities are available to all dorm residents. Samara nodded, at a loss for words. A man in the same ornate school livery the men at the airport and the driver wore rushed out to meet them. "Marietta, you may want to take Lady Samara in the back way." By the way, the older woman straightened and looked down her nose at the man. Samara guessed the suggestion was offensive. "What problem is there?" she snapped, sounding a little too much like a general on the battlefield. "Christiana." Samara waited for more, but it seemed the word, or more likely name, was enough to make his point. "Christiana will learn her place soon enough. Come along, Samara." She didn't hesitate. Something told Samara she was safer at Marietta's side than she was balking her or questioning her, considering Marietta's current mood. "At least until she shows me to my room." The man sighed, then followed along, seemingly resigned to whatever was coming. He ran ahead to open a door for them. The complaining from inside was shrill, a tone that set Samara's nerves on edge. "What a whining little bitch. I demand to be shown to my rooms immediately." Samara strained to hear the stomp of a foot that never occurred. "We are attempting to." "Not that way, you witless baboon. My rooms are alpha level." The door swung wide and Samara got her first look at the harpy within. Her hair was as long and as straight as Samara's was, but Christiana's hair was red-brown instead of brown with golden highlights like Samara's. Christiana was dressed in high-heeled boots, suede pants, and a poofy white blouse that looked like something a preschooler would wear. A half-dozen sparkling bracelets ringed one wrist, and her nails were long and professionally manicured. One of the 3 liveried men facing her took a deep breath. "Lady Christiana, had you read the invitation to campus carefully?" "I've told you that was an error," she insisted. "As I have assured you it was not. I am alpha level. I have been alpha level at every school I have attended." Marietta stepped forward. "You are not alpha level at this school in this year. Attempt to be an adult, Christiana, and accept your place with grace and fortitude, or something approximating it." Christiana spun around in what could only be described as a choreographed move. She scowled at Marietta. "You dare counsel me, servant? Who does this bitch think she is?" Just because Marietta worked for the college didn't mean she was inferior to anyone else here. Marietta laughed harshly. "I am no servant of yours," she countered. "Thank the goddess for that. You should have been. Your reprieve will be short-lived, I assure you." "My father," Samara snapped. Her vision went red-tinged around the edges, as it always seemed to when she got angry. "That's it? That's the best you've got? I'll sick my daddy on you." How pathetic was this girl? Christiana raked a sneer up Samara's body. "And who is your father? Since you've seen fit to mock me, that is none of your business." It wouldn't be, even if Samara knew what answer to give. Sadly, she no longer knew that for certain, and all outward signs said Christiana was the type who quoted which countries her family had manners in. The idle carts full of personal belongings standing about, presumably waiting for a resolution before they could be transported to Christiana's rooms, held what was easily 10 times the amount Samara had brought with her, and that was after a stock-up trip to round out her decimated wardrobe. After Samara's mother misplaced a large number of the outfits she'd left behind the first night. "On the contrary, I think it is. I don't know you, but I see by the servant attending you that you're the bitch she's taking to." Marietta laid a backhanded slap across Christiana's face that rocked her head back on her neck and bloodied her lip. "Be more careful who you call a bitch. Dog. No one insults Lady Samara in my presence and walks away unscathed." That is my place as her servant. Students and employees gathered in hallways out to the wings, whispering to each other and watching the unfolding scene. Samara wondered whether they were glad Christiana got bitch-slapped or laying odds on what her response would be to it. Christiana shot a narrow-eyed gaze at Marietta, then at Samara. The alpha level is my place. I demand a challenge. Marietta dropped back to Samara's side. You are under no obligation to accept this challenge. Christiana is not due what she is demanding. She wants to fight me? Why? I wasn't the one who slapped her, though I agree. She deserved it. The old woman nodded, her expression guarded. It is tradition. You have a tradition of fighting? What kind of school have I come to? She'd heard European boarding schools sometimes had hazing and such that had been outlawed in other schools, but Samara had thought all universities had done away with it. An ancient one, and students only invoke it every few decades. Most are better behaved. Lucky me to meet the worst behaved student this university has had in 2 decades. Enough of that. I need information. But she has no right to ask for this? I'll just refuse her challenge then. No. She sighed, then dropped her voice further. If you refuse to fight now, Christiana will attempt to back you into a fight later. She hadn't expected to have to fight today. If you win now, she cannot start the same fight again. You wait and fight her later. She has time to prepare to fight you. I would have the same time to prepare. What are the rules? If they favored Samara, it might be better to fight now, tired though she was. Bare hands. One-on-one. No weapons. No allies. To concession, to incapacitation, or to pin. Samara nodded. The rules were simple enough. Another thing. Christiana has always had men to guard her and servants to protect her. She can't fight. That's good news. She can, but not as well as your brown belt affords you. Be aware though. Christiana will try to use her fingernails and those spike heels as weapons. She will play off that anything on her body is fair game in a fight. She fights dirty. Check. Good to know. Samara shot a sideward glance at her foe, noting everything she could use as a weapon. There wasn't much, thank goodness. Do you accept the challenge or not? Christiana asked archly, clearly believing she'd scared Samara off. She smirked in perceived victory. Samara's anger simmered its way toward a boil. The release of adrenaline wiped away her fatigue and readied her for battle. Agreed. For alpha level? Samara noted Marietta's tip of the head. She trusted Marietta. There was little chance this was a setup. Agreed. Even if she lost, chances were the rooms she would be given were beyond Samara's wildest dreams. Samara kicked her flats to the far side of the foyer. The liveried men waved everyone back to clear the center of the floor for them. Christiana glanced toward the shoes Samara had shed, then settled her gaze on Samara herself. Don't expect the same of me. Of course. Then again, I don't need tricks. Step 1. Make your opponent think twice about fighting you. There may not be a fight that way. If she backs out after I've accepted the challenge, does she forfeit the right to try again? Probably so, which means she won't do it. Samara sighed. Christiana squared her shoulders, which looked more than a little stupid in that poof of a shirt. Boots are not weapons. They are shoes. Anything on my body. I was told you would say that. She looked like she would protest. Are we fighting or not? Step 2. Keep your opponent off balance. It seemed she'd managed that. Christiana hesitated a full 5 seconds before she managed a sloppy fighting stance. Samara flowed into a complimentary one and waited for the first attack. She didn't have long to wait. Christiana tried a front kick. Samara sidestepped it, caught her ankle in one hand, then cleanly snapped off the heel aimed for her chest. She raised an eyebrow and pitched the heel over her shoulder, then pushed Christiana back. She hobbled for a moment, crimson spreading from her neck to her forehead. You broke my boot. Samara shrugged. You could take them off as I did. These are €400 boots. You're paying for these. You wore them into a fight. If you break a nail, are you going to demand I pay for your manicure? Laughter rose around them and Christiana glared at her. Though Samara hadn't set out to do it, I was just my sarcastic self. She'd shamed her opponent. Christiana tried a sidekick with the other foot. Samara managed to snap the heel at the base, but it remained loosely attached to the sole of the boot, stymieing her plan to pitch the second one as she had the first. I can still make it count. There. Now you can wear them or remove them and not hobble much either way. That was a stretch of the truth, since the hard soles would keep her feet at that 4-inch up angle, which would leave Christiana off balance. The laughter grew stronger and someone hooted. In the distance, Samara saw someone pump a fist in the air. Christiana isn't well liked. Such a surprise. She unzipped the boots, then yanked them off. Christiana threw them aside with a glare that pronounced Samara would be paying for those boots with blood. Rule number 1. Never go into a fight angry. Samara supposed she should be thankful her opponent had given her yet another advantage, but something told her Christiana had just become much more dangerous. As if confirming that, Christiana launched at her. There were no kicks. Probably because Samara had taken her weapons away and proven I'm faster than she is. Samara deflected one blow after another, though she knew she should simply incapacitate Christiana. Something deep and primal demanded she embarrass her. First, Christiana stepped up the attacks, grumbling words that made no sense. Finally, she managed to land a blow. 3 of her fingernails raked across Samara's right cheek. Something snapped inside her and Samara started laying blows. The 1-2. Christiana's chin knocked her head back. When she righted herself, Samara broke her nose, sending her reeling several steps backward. Before Christiana could react, Samara kicked her mid-chest and sent her into the wall. She crumpled in a heap, leaving cracked plaster behind. Samara pointed to the flaw in the once perfect wall. That I will pay for. Have no idea how. I may have to get a work-study job or something, but I will pay for damage I caused to the school. Nonsense, Marietta announced. Loser of the challenge pays all damages to school property. Thank goodness. Christiana can afford it. Samara nodded, then took a shaky step toward the liveried men. Marietta took her arm gently and stopped her. She whispered in Samara's ear. You must announce your place before you leave, as a sign of your victory. She took a step back. Samara considered what Christiana had said during the challenge. She growled out the announcement, annoyed by the pomp and circumstance of their rules. I am alpha level. Cheers and clapping echoed around the foyer, returning again from the ends of the hallways. A red-headed girl rushed to Samara, offering the shoes she'd shed to fight. She tipped her head with a wide smile. Samara took them with an answering smile. Thank you. I don't know anyone's name. I better start learning them. Eva. My pleasure, Alpha. Anytime. She backed away and motioned the way to a staircase one of the red-clad men had opened the door to. Eva. Marietta's tone made it seem she was issuing a summons. Yes, ma'am. Why don't you accompany us to Lady Samara's rooms and help the Alpha settle in? If Lady Samara wishes, I would be happy to help. The look Eva shot her was somewhat hopeful. I could use a friend. Like Marietta, Eva put her instantly at ease. I would like that. After the long flight, and Samara motioned toward Christiana. The help would be great. Oh, and call me Samara, please. Thankfully, there were no negative responses to her inviting Eva to call her by her name instead of a title. Eva smiled widely and stepped in time with Samara as they followed Marietta up the stairs. 3 flights up, Samara slowed, her senses on high alert. She turned half, expecting an attack at her back. Far from it, she found herself facing 2 gorgeous guys, eyeing me like a hot steak. They weren't ground round either. They were close in height, one with hair slightly darker than the others. Their eyes were a deep brown, not unlike her. Their skin was deeply tanned, or naturally light olive. The one with the darker hair had a pierced ear that gave him a slightly rugged look, and both of them were beautifully cut. Heat settled deep in her abdomen and Samara whipped away and hurried up the stairs, her cheeks flaming in embarrassment. It's just the fight. A good fight had always left her aroused. She glanced back, but they were gone. Good thing, because they are so my type. She'd never been more tempted to sate the arousal than she was today. Jason waited in the corridor outside their suite, his nerves humming. The sounds of battle ended abruptly. Clapping and cheers thundered up the stairwell soon after. He trembled in excitement, like a damned pup. What the hell is the matter with me? James clapped a hand on his shoulder, grounding him. Don't worry. There is no way Sebastian's daughter lost to Christiana. Jason glared at his older twin. I know that. Then what is it? The question caused Jason to squirm harder. What if she doesn't like us? James rolled his eyes. It's tradition. You heard what Alpha Pietro said. She doesn't know our traditions and Sebastian will consider letting her break with them, if she will not bend. He stopped speaking abruptly at the sound of footsteps mounting the stairs. The Alpha's servant came into view first. Just as she should. She was a grand old matriarch, and Pietro said she had served 2 generations of Sebastian's family so far. If anyone crossed Samara, answering to Marietta, wouldn't be pleasant. He wondered if Christiana had already tasted the servant's claws. As she passed by, Jason got his first look at the alpha female. Sebastian's daughter. Our mate. Samara. He stopped himself from saying it by the Night Mother's grace alone. Samara had more curves than the average she-wolf would. Most likely due to her human mother. She dressed casually in stretch jeans and a white button-down shirt. Not at all like Christiana would dress. Samara's feet were bare, and she had her shoes hooked onto the fingertips of one hand. Her golden brown hair reached past her full chest. As Samara turned her head to address the young she-wolf at her side, he spied the wounds on her cheek. Jason tensed. Their mate was injured. He would rip the one responsible apart. James closed a hand on his shoulder and squeezed hard. The message was clear. Enough. Calm down. Don't move. This was a challenge. She took her pound of flesh in return, whatever it might have been. Jason forced his muscles to loosen. This was why Marietta ordered us to stay. Stairs. If we gave in to our instincts, we could have cost Samara her place. And us ours. Made it to Christiana? Kill me first. Samara stopped and whipped around, adopting a partial crouch. Ready to attack. Ready to pounce. She took in their scent, her breathing quickening. Her cheeks flooded with color. Samara spun away and loped after her servant, leaving her enticing scent behind to torture him. He shuddered, welcoming the torture. She would be theirs. James growled. Oh yes. She likes us. Samara lounged in the oversized bed, trying to stay awake long enough to reset her sleep to the new time zone. The paperwork on what to bring had informed her that US-size sheets would be useless to her, but that bed linens would be provided. Samara hadn't been sure what to make of that. She wasn't fond of scratchy sheets, and she'd saved up an extra €100 in case she had to purchase sheets she would be comfortable with. Cheap-cut polyester blend wasn't what they were offering, thankfully. The choices had ranged from flannel to jersey cotton, from 1800 thread count, Egyptian cotton to silk, and in a range of deep colors: brick red, hunter green, and navy blue. Though Samara suspected the flannel would be great for winter weather, and said as much, the hunter green or navy blue Egyptian cotton won the toss-up for warm weather. The blue was currently on the bed. Marietta entered the room again, pausing to check on Samara. She went off to whatever she was doing with a smile on her face. That's it. I have to sit up or I'll fall asleep. To her surprise, Marietta didn't protest her resistance to sleep. Samara had never had what other people called a doting mother, but she would bet Marietta fit the profile. The woman hovered, taking care of everything for Samara she possibly could, including unpacking and storing all of Samara's clothing. The lady in question cleared her throat. She didn't wait for Samara to form words. There is a second suite of rooms on this floor. It is always Alpha's choice who to offer it to. If you enjoy Eva's company, you can offer it to her. If you prefer to wait until you've met other students. What precisely is the Alpha? The highest ranked student, of course. What a competitive school. No wonder they are ranked so high in the college standings. Then why is that challenge travesty allowed to happen? It won't change our SATs or IQs or entrance exam scores. Marietta smiled widely and went back to putting folded towels in the linen closet inside the bathroom door. It is an ancient tradition. They often don't make sense when viewed with a modern eye. Then why not abolish it? She sighed. We, like most, cling to traditions for the illusion of rich history they provide. Good or bad, we are loath to let them die a natural death. We have done away with many of them. This one is slower than most to die out. Why not that one? Were there really worse traditions that went first? Because they were more glaring? I trust one of the future presidents of the university board will see things your way. So far, none of them have been as evolved as you are. Her tone said. She was joking. Samara wasn't sure how to answer, so she remained silent. If you prefer to wait. No. Offer the room to Eva. The afternoon with her had been very enjoyable. They'd been laughing and joking in no time. It was rare for Samara to find someone she clicked with so quickly. Marietta turned smartly. As you wish, Samara. Can I bring you anything else? No. I'm fine. She leaned back against the plush pillows, listening to the patter of Marietta's feet disappearing down the hall. I'm top dog here. For the first time in my life I am. That thought warmed her, and long before Marietta returned, Samara was fast asleep. Marietta entered the Alpha Maestro's conference room, where they had reportedly been meeting with all manner of servants and guards for Samara all afternoon. Not that Samara would be informed of their presence. They would simply shadow her when she left campus, protecting her from the humans who might harm her. She didn't bow to Pietro. Since Sebastian was in the room, Marietta showed proper respect to the highest-ranked member of their pack. I changed his diapers when I worked for his mother, but he is still my alpha. Sebastian waved her closer, and she complied, taking a seat halfway down the table. Not close enough to be deemed presumptuous, but not far enough away to be seen as fishing for a compliment when he decides whether or not to invite me closer. Sebastian seemed content with her choice. He got straight down to business. Has my daughter settled in well? He inquired. Very well. She is leery of the challenge. Samara wonders why we still permit it. She will understand in time. He dismissed her concerns. It is never smart to disagree with an alpha, even one who is somewhat fond of you. As you say. Regardless, her first sight of her mates was promising, and she has chosen a den sister. The muscle at the back of Sebastian's jaw twitched. And her choice. Marietta tried not to take that personally. Did he really believe she would fail to discourage a bad choice? She cleared her throat. A sound one. A lower. Noble daughter but loyal and pleasant. They get along well together. Do I know the family? I believe you do. She knew he did, but it never hurt to act as if she didn't, in case he'd forgotten the couple. Eva's mother is Tricia, and her maid is Dane Howell. Eva is their youngest daughter. Adored but not pampered and spoiled. He tapped a fingertip against his lower lip, deep in thought. She has an elder brother and 2 elder sisters as memory serves. And this will mean a social jump for the entire family. He nodded. Good. Tell the girl what she needs to know, and keep me informed. As you wish, Sebastian. With that, she was off to her work. Chapter 3. A week later. Welcome, class of 2019. Samara clapped politely and hoped it was the end of the matriculation ceremony. Finally, Eva huffed. I cannot wait to get out of this gown. That makes 2 of us, Samara agreed. The day was sweltering, and the scarlet, velvet-trimmed graduation gowns were overkill considering the weather. When the board members left the stage, they were both out of their seats, stripping off the gowns with sighs of relief. Marietta and Suzanne, Eva's servant, appeared to take them with silent nods that said they would be in the dorms if there was need of their services. Around them, other servants did the same, male servants for male students and female for female. Ladies' maids and gentlemen's gentlemen. But Marietta isn't just a lady's maid. She was also a bodyguard of sorts, a teacher, and for all that it galled Samara, something of a nanny. Were all the servants the same, or was Marietta simply responding to the fact that, unlike the other students, Samara didn't know the rules and traditions already? In the distance, Christiana pushed her gown at her servant as if she loathed the sight of her, or of the gown. Samara couldn't be sure which, but she suspected it was the servant that irritated her. Is there a problem, Samara? Eva asked, her golden green eyes narrowing. Samara looked away from Christiana before the other woman could catch her staring. Deciding what to say or ask was difficult. She never knew who was listening in. Beyond not wanting to start a war with Christiana with a misplaced word, Samara didn't want to appear naive or stupid. She'd never realized how much there could be to learn about the university. The first full day she'd been on campus alone had consisted of Eva and Marietta teaching Samara rules and traditions. None of the remaining ones involved fighting as far as she could tell, and her 2 tutors had promised to head her off at the pass if it seemed she was about to commit a faux pas of some sort. So far she hadn't. Eva and Marietta answered her questions patiently, even when Eva's expression announced she found them odd. Samara trusted them, but she didn't doubt her. Standing with the rest of the student body was precarious. She couldn't undermine it with a poor choice of question or comment in public. A hand closed on Samara's shoulder. She met Eva's gaze and managed a weak smile. I'm fine, she offered before Eva could ask. Well, that is good, I suppose. Marietta would lock you in your room and call in doctors from the clinic if you weren't. Both laughed heartily, mostly because they knew she wasn't exaggerating. Arm in arm, they made their way out of the amphitheater. Once they were in the clear, Eva tried again. What is bothering you? More confused than bothered. Okay, what is confusing you? Each section of the seating was a dorm building. I could pick that out by the heraldry and the order of seating. You've got that right. It doesn't sound like you're confused. Samara considered how best to broach the subject. Depending on the dorm building, there were varying numbers of servants. In our dorm, more than 3/4 of the students have a servant, then half less than half a few one. Eva nodded sagely. The alpha and her chosen friend, and the alpha-level males. Below, get a servant supplied by the school. The Trudale brothers. I saw them the first day. If it's possible, the school employs a servant who has worked for the students' families before. For instance, Suzanne was my mother's servant when she attended. That's why Christiana thought Marietta. Oh, that's a bad way to phrase it. You can say it. Christiana acted like she owned Marietta, though they would likely have reassigned Marietta and hired one of Christiana's families. Servants, had you lost the challenge, she would have been stuck in the position for the first few days until a replacement arrived. And Christiana would have made life hell for Marietta. I am so glad I won that match. She's quite the little bitch, as you might have noticed. You need to understand this. Christiana and Lorelia feel you've stolen something from them. Not just the alpha level rooms, because you know Christina would have given my room to Lorelia had she been alpha, but the school servants, they felt they were due. Samara winced. And the rest of the servants? Eva questioned her silently. Who employs them? Why doesn't everyone have one? Families who can afford them, those who want to show off that wealth or who want to pamper their children, provide a servant for them out of their own pockets. And the servant you would have had? Had the woman lost her job, or had the school simply taken the expense of Susanna off of her family's hands? Eva's smile faded a bit. I wouldn't have had one. My family isn't as well off as Christiana's. She isn't embarrassed by that, is she? I don't care how much money she has. I guess I wouldn't have had one either, she admitted. But you're an alpha. Her expression said Samara had said the wrong thing. Again. Sure. So I rocked the test. Another day I have a head cold, my score drops 10 points. I'm not alpha. Academically, highest was a fleeting thing. Eva stopped and stared at her. Samara held herself stock still, certain she'd just made a major faux pas. Hiding her attack of nerves was nearly impossible, but she thought she managed it. Samara, being alpha has nothing to do with tests and scores. She said it carefully, as if she was afraid Samara might be angry with the answer. Marietta said the alpha was highest ranked. Had she lied? Of the highest ranked ancestry, the most powerful line. That's why there are so few challenges. The lines of ancestry are rarely contested, and when they are, it is usually someone's parents disagreeing, not students. After a moment of silence, during which Samara found herself unable to form words, Eva continued. The traditions we're teaching you, they aren't just traditions of the university. They are traditions of our people, a proud and ancient race. Whatever your family line is, it's much higher than mine. Higher than Christina's. I admit I don't know your line. Tyler isn't a recognized lineage. What is your mother's maiden name? O'Connor. Neither is that. Her brow furrowed and she seemed genuinely perplexed. I don't understand this. You are of our kind, or you wouldn't have been invited to the school. Samara considered how to phrase the truth. Liam Tyler was my mother's husband. He raised me as his own. He's not your biological father then. The usual animation returned to her face in a flash. No. He's not biologically my father. So who is your father? Before Samara could decide whether or not to admit the truth, a snide voice interrupted them. I see the poor cousins shop at S-Mart together. Samara didn't bother to look at Christiana. S-Mart is where Ash works in the Evil Dead movies. I think Kmart or Walmart would be the insult you are so desperately seeking. She didn't bother to point out that the dress had been purchased at a formal shop for her prom. It wasn't a designer dress, and Christiana's likely was. I notice you are familiar with the stores. A twitter of unkind laughter let her know they had an audience of Christiana's cronies. Samara turned to face her and forced her mouth into a vicious smile. Christiana wanted to embarrass her? Two could play that game. I notice your daddy didn't manage to make you alpha. Face it, no matter how well you dress up, you will be masking the fact that you are second best. May not know who my father is, but I know hers isn't up to par. For a potent moment, Christiana's cronies gaped at Samara. Christiana stood, shell-shocked, much as she would if Samara would have slapped her across the face. Just when Samara would have stalked away in disgust, Christiana launched toward her. Samara moved to block the swing toward her throat and something sliced deep into her arm. She has a knife. She's trying to kill me. Though Samara knew it would drive the blade deeper, she forced her arm forward to throw Christiana off balance. The bitch went sprawling. Her cronies stopped laughing and went ashen. They stepped back, waving Samara off. We had nothing to do with this, Lorelia assured her. She said it was a joke. Samara didn't doubt it was true. All the same, the drive to rip them to pieces rose up. A tinge of red clouded her vision. Two male bodies bracketed her. Samara's move to attack Christiana and all three of her so-called friends ended with her wrists trapped by one man each. She pulled at their hold, growling out a warning to release her. Move. The one to her left ordered. Take that bitch with you. Christiana paused in the act of dusting off her ruined dress. How dare you? Call. Samara lunged for her and Christina squealed and ran the opposite direction. The other three took off after her, one of them passing Christiana in a matter of a few footsteps. The man on Samara's right released her for a split second. There was a flurry of white from his direction. The sound of fabric ripping jangled her nerves. Samara fought for a decent breath, her head spinning. Her entire body ached and twitched. He yanked the knife from her arm and Samara screamed. Her knees weakened. In a dizzying series of movements, he wrapped something around her injured arm and pulled it tight. You're going to be fine, Samara. She focused on the shirtless man addressing her. Had he sacrificed his shirt to make a bandage for her? That seemed likely. He was one of the two men who lived on the floor below her, the Trudale brothers. The wind whipped around them and their scents surrounded her. Samara looked from one to the other, arousal beating at her nerves. The one who'd stripped off his shirt leaned toward her. Oh yes. Came out. Little more than a breath of air, teasing at her lips. Her arm went numb, giving her relief from the pain. Jason. Wrong time. He pulled away, going red-faced. Right. Wrong time. No. Right time. Very right time. There was no time to voice her complaint. The one behind her scooped Samara into his arms and they rushed toward a building. The clinic. I need a doctor. As if in agreement, her heart started racing. Eva, take that to the Alpha Maestro, Jason yelled back. Be careful not to cut yourself. Samara looked up at the man carrying her. What is your name? She knew his brother's name. She supposed she should know them both since she owed them for helping her. He seemed stunned by the question. At last he found his voice. James. James and Jason. Samara closed her eyes, suddenly exhausted. Unconsciousness closed over her like a thick blanket. James stamped down the need to howl out in fury. If Samara was seriously injured, he would hunt down Christiana and tear her throat out himself. If Sebastian doesn't get to her first, that was unlikely at best, so he focused on Samara fully. Jason raced ahead and pulled the clinic door open for them. James vaulted through it with Samara held tight to his chest, and Jason rounded them. Alpha with an emergency, his brother shouted. Move ass. Now. Two doctors came from the far reaches of the clinic, probably playing cards or inventorying their stock. It's not like wolves need them often. The first one to reach them tugged at the knot on the makeshift bandage. No, Jason cautioned him. It was a hunter's fong. Both pulled back. One swallowed hard. In the next moment they were checking everything from her pulse and breathing to her pupil reactions. One raced for the back again. James tried to reconcile it. A hunter's fong? Are you sure? That's why I sent it off to Alpha Pietro with Eva. However, Christiana got it. This has to be addressed now. In here, the remaining doctor ordered. James followed him, his senses reeling. Christiana swung for her throat. throat shot with a hunter's fang would have killed Samara. Here, James. The snap of the doctor's commands brought him to his senses and James lowered Samara to the king-sized bed in the alpha room. When an alpha needs care, he or she has an alpha's comforts. She was alarmingly pale and seemed to be having problems taking in a lungful of air. The other doctor rushed in with a dusty, ornate glass jar. I never thought we would need this, he grumbled. Stephen. Working on it. He unwrapped Jason's shirt from her arm. James cursed fluently. Her entire lower arm and hand were crimson and swollen. The knife wound had blackened edges and was weeping a mixture of blood and yellowed pus. A hunter's fang. There was no question about it. Nothing else would cause that reaction in a wolf. Damn the wolf hunters of the 17th and 18th centuries. The doctors didn't waste time. They used the ointment to scrub out the wound, leaving it red and raw. Then they put more ointment in the laceration and wrapped it loosely. Will she recover? Jason asked. Stephen looked up and smiled at them. I take it you are her mates? James glared at him. I believe my brother asked you a question. The other doctor straightened and offered his hand. My name is Benjamin. My partner is Stephen. Did we ask your names? James inquired coolly. Benjamin. Yes, that's how he knew my name. He treated me when that prank went wrong first year. Benjamin sighed. All signs point to a full recovery, but it will not be an easy one. The poison moves quickly. Perhaps a scar. Stephen added his observations to the discussion. With a hunter's fang, that is possible. Yes, perhaps. Samara will have to stay here for the next day or two. After that, she will need a week of recovery time in her rooms. Then we stay here too, Jason decreed before James could. Of course, the doctors replied in unison. Sebastian smiled at Pietro over his glass of wine. She is beautiful. The photos his men brought him over the years didn't do justice to the woman Samara had become. I hear she also has the temperament of an alpha female. I knew she would. Human though her mother was, the woman had spirit. He still loved that about her, though he loathed the woman in general. She was fine stock to create my daughter, though lacking in other ways, not the least of which is the fact that she's not a wolf. Pietro leaned forward. If it wouldn't be impertinent to ask. It would. The memories put a damper on his happiness, just as they always had. Wisely, Pietro didn't respond. They sat in a pleasant silence, sipping their wine. The shout of a warning to halt brought Sebastian's head up in shock, and they both vaulted to their feet, their glasses abandoned on the conference table. What in the red hell is this? Human hunters hadn't breached the campus for well over 100 years, and how would one make it to the administration building without a general alarm being sounded? He couldn't. It's impossible. I need the alpha and maestro, a young woman stammered out. Pietro made it to the door 2 steps before Sebastian did. He wrenched the door open, and the young lady rushed toward them. Pietro dodged left and Sebastian took his cue, dodging right. If this was some kind of attack, they would have her flanked. She came to a halt an arm's length away from both, which left Sebastian staring at a frightened she-wolf. Worse, the youngster was holding a bloodied blade, and her hands and dress were stained with the same. What happened, Eva? Pietro asked. Eva? Samara's den sister. He could see the likeness to her father in her. Christiana attacked Samara with this. I think. She sobbed. I think it's a. It seemed she couldn't force the words out. Sebastian focused on the blade, his blood running cold. A hunter's fang. But they were outlawed within the wolf community. He had passed that law. Personally, his first decree as alpha. Eva threw the blade onto the table with a whimper of distress. She backed away from it, trembling and sobbing. Sebastian made it to her first. He wrapped an arm around her, supporting Eva to the far end of the table. Where is Samara? Is she well? With a hunter's fang stained with blood? The more appropriate question would be, is she alive? Sebastian couldn't face asking it. James and Jason took her to the clinic. Her arm. Christiana sliced into her arm. Even that could kill, but not if they got her there quickly enough. He released her and turned toward the doorway, but Eva's whisper stopped him short. She aimed for Samara's throat. Night Mother, what was she thinking? Sebastian didn't turn back, trying to hide his shifting features as best he could. I want Marcus here. Now. And I want that bitch gone within a day. It will be done. He loped away toward the clinic, his vision red in bloodlust. Wolves gave him a wide berth as he passed. Damned right, it will be done and no one will dare try again. I made those abominations illegal. Now I'm going to make that law hurt. Chapter 4. Sebastian sat brooding in one of the wing chairs set before the fire in his residence den. He'd been to see Samara twice and nothing had changed so far. His daughter lay unconscious and lightly fevering, her breathing shallow but stable. She could be dead. If Samara was slower or less skilled, she would be dead. He raked a hand through his hair. A hunter's fong. How lost have I been in my misery that a wolf dared balk me and keep one of those abominations? Are there more of them? A show of force was warranted. The polite knock at the door put his nerves on edge. Yes. Marcus is here, Sebastian. Thank you, Roberto. Show him in. Sebastian knew Roberto would have left Marcus waiting in the sitting room. That meant he had plenty of time to get to his desk before Roberto opened the door and waved Marcus through it. He strode through as if he had not a care in the world. Then he bowed sharply. Not cordially. You called for me, Alpha? At least he didn't presume to use my given name. In his current state of mind, Sebastian might leave scars if Marcus displayed such presumption. Yes, I did. I need to speak to you about several issues. Marcus moved toward one of the guest chairs. Did I say you should sit? He jerked to a halt. No, Alpha. Of course not. This is not a business meeting. Neither is it a friendly chat. Make no mistake. This day may mark the end of your den, Marcus. Tread lightly but honestly with me. If I learn your daughter knew what the weapon was, she dies today. Though it pained Sebastian to take a wolf's only child away, some crimes required that punishment. Moreover, if I learn you knew of the existence of the weapon, you will die. Marcus went pale. Alpha? What have we done? Your daughter tried to take the life of her class Alpha today. He ground his teeth. The Alpha. I should have known. I have heard nothing but complaints about the Alpha from my daughter in the last week. Sebastian tensed at the implied criticism of Samara. Marcus waved him off. Not that I am excusing my daughter's behavior. Phew. And Pietro say this, Samara Tyler is Alpha female, I trust your judgment. He hesitated. But why have we never heard of this Alpha before? Where was she schooled? Whose line does she come from? His frustration set Sebastian off. Before he could talk himself down, his ears, eyes, paws, and muzzle had shifted. Marcus shuffled back a step, then dropped to his hands and knees in a sign of submission. My reaction told Marcus what Samara is to me. He knows now. He knows only my own blood would make me lose control this way. You need not know the details of my daughter's life, Sebastian informed him. What his pack would assume was shameful enough. They didn't need to know the whole sordid truth. Only Samara needs the awful truth. When she is ready to ask for it. He forced himself to shift back, but it cost him an effort. This is not to be shared, Marcus. Not even with your daughter. If you live that long. Yes, Alpha. My daughter will be dealt with. I assure you she will. She will indeed. At the least, Christiana is no longer welcome at this university or at any of the ones I sit on the board of. Marcus was silent, probably working his way to the fact that Sebastian sat on the board of 3 of the 5 wolf universities worldwide. Since it was a safe bet Christiana didn't speak Japanese, he just proclaimed she would have to attend university in northern Norway, above the Arctic Circle. Hope you like snow, Christiana. He nodded. I understand. It is most fair of you. She will be leaving campus with you tonight, Marcus. Pietro has already ordered her packed out to leave. That is assuming, of course, that she survives my judgment. Marcus snapped his head up, his eyes wild at the bluntly stated threat to his daughter. Alpha, surely nothing Christiana could have done would really end. Stand. I want you to look me in the eyes when you answer my questions, and may the Night Mother have mercy on you if you lie to me. Marcus made his way shakily to his feet. He nodded, his expression strained. Sebastian pulled the blood-stained blade from the towel on his desk. He held between them. That's a hunter's fong. I am well aware of what it is. Christiana used. Yes, she did. So, I am sure you can understand the severity of this crime. Is she well? Your daughter? Samara. He tripped over his words nearly in a panic. Sebastian shot him a quelling look. I mean, He swallowed hard, going red in the face. Samara is alive. Thank the Night Mother for that favor. Had your daughters blowbit skin at her intended target, my daughter would be dead now. Marcus would know what that meant. Artery, lung, or heart? Sebastian barely heard him. Throat. Marcus winced. Sebastian dropped the dagger, letting it clatter to the desktop. He savored Marcus's cringe. I have him where I want him. He won't dare lie to me now. I am sure you are aware of the laws governing a hunter's fang. Marcus nodded. I swear I knew nothing about it. Then where did your daughter get it? Since she is an inept fighter, I assume. She didn't take one off a hunter personally. I can ask, but I suspect. You suspect what? Who? Where did she get a hunter's fang? Marcus sighed, then rubbed a hand over his mouth. My father didn't want to give up his collection. When the new law was announced, he resisted turning them over. I turned in 5 of his blades for destruction. Sebastian's stomach churned. 5. He hadn't realized anyone had an arsenal of that size. It was all I could find. My father swore I'd found them all. He cursed me out of his house. We never spoke again. He shifted from foot to foot as if he felt the need to pace. Sebastian wasn't in a giving mood. You believe your father gave Christiana the blade before he died? Perhaps not intentionally. You see, my father left me nothing. Everything was left to Christiana and to my sister Aubrey. I checked everything that came into my home, but my father was fond of false bottom drawers and trunks, hidden compartments, anywhere he could hide his prized possessions. I believe the blades came to my daughter hidden in some larger piece of furniture. He was addled near the end. He may not have remembered where the blades were stored or that he'd hidden some from me at all. In other words, you're guessing. Yes, damn it. I'm also guessing Christiana didn't know what the weapon was. To her, it would have been nothing more than an impressive piece of workmanship. That was likely true, since Marcus didn't own one and the law was passed before their daughters were born. Christiana may never have learned about them. Sebastian took a calming breath. Get the answers from your daughter, Marcus. I will, Alpha. Have her off this campus and away from Samara before sunrise, but do not leave without giving me the answers I'm seeking. You have my vow on that. He was gone without a backward glance. Roberto appeared in the doorway. Samara has awakened, Sebastian. Devon reports that she is still fevering and is quite befuddled, but the wound is healing well. His muscles relaxed in a rush of released breath. Good. Thank you, Roberto. He left silently, as he had done for years, since he was my servant here at university. Sebastian laid his head back, exhausted. All these years he'd pined away at the loss of his daughter, at the stolen chance to be a father to her. A week with Samara at the periphery of his life, and he wasn't certain how parents survive decades in the role. Can we do anything for her? A deep male voice asked. Samara licked her lips, trying to place it. For that matter, she tried to make sense of where she was and why. No dice. I can't think of anything, roasting as I am. She pushed the sheets and blanket away, trying to cool off. Tepid water. Bathe her face, arms, legs. Let's bring this fever back down. Right. One soft cloth started at her forehead, worked down her face to her chin, then caressed her throat. Another slid down the inside of one thigh. Male musk surrounded her and Samara arched up to their touch. There was a moment of stillness, and their scent intensified. Get out, one of them ordered. Footsteps moved away, and a door closed with a click of metal on metal. Water rippled and splashed. The cloth on her face returned and traced the path down the opposite side. She spread her legs, and the other worked its way from the opposite knee to nearly her core. All manner of erotic visions paraded through her head. Jason shivered. Damn, this is hard. For that matter, he was hard and had been for the better part of the week since he'd first scented Samara. I am getting a ferocious case of blue balls. Stop thinking about it. This is for her health and safety. Bathe her. Bring down the fever. That in mind, Jason refreshed his rag and started bathing her head and neck. Again, droplets of water fell on her clinic gown, turning the lightweight material translucent. Samara shifted every time a droplet fell. She gasped at the first time one landed on a nipple. Jason stared at the erect tip, his breathing ragged. Do it. James rasped. Jason snapped his head around, issuing a silent question. James couldn't be telling him to suck it into his mouth. Not while Samara's semi-conscious. Bathe her. Through the shirt. Don't undress her, but help her shed the heat everywhere. Which will mean she'll be as good as nude. He nodded. Samara needed wetting down to reduce the fever. There's a reason we're doing this instead of the doctors. Jason left the rag sopping and started working it down her chest. The gown stuck to her body, outlining every curve. Pass after pass with the rag prompted moans from Samara. She arched her back, offering herself to him. To us. She's as affected by what James is doing as she is by what I'm doing. He didn't doubt that. Samara cried out and Jason looked toward James's position. His brother had done the same job of wetting Samara down on her lower half. That meant they could see every inch of her from a front view. They say alpha females are created in the Night Mother's image. I know Samara. Must be. James leaned over her and Jason prepared to warn him off. No matter how enticing she was, they couldn't take advantage of her blind lust. His brother didn't put his mouth on her. Instead he blew air over her core, bringing Samara off the bed with a whimper. It's an old trick for keeping cool, James explained. Wrap yourself in wet linen or cotton, then blow air over the fabric to draw off heat. Jason swallowed hard. He leaned down and breathed on her throat. Samara shivered and her scent took on a potent edge. Jason moved on to her shoulders. And then her nipples. She grabbed him by the head and dragged Jason's lips to hers. Samara parted her lips and invited him in. I can't deny her this. James didn't protest it. His twin moved up Samara's body, trailing his lips over her abdomen, blowing puffs of air over her sensitive skin. Jason eased out of the kiss and made way for James to share in the taste of her passion. At the first breath James released against her cheek, Samara turned to him and pulled him into a similar embrace. Goddess, that's sexy. James pushed to his knees. Help me get her up. You're not. No. I want you to bathe her back. Besides. He smiled. I want her to feel us. On either side of her. Jason hurried to help him. In moments, Samara was astride James's thighs. Jason sliding his knees between his twins. When Jason set to work bathing her back, Samara started shifting back and forth over James's cock. He hurried through the rest of the bathing, watching the curve of her ass appear through the dripping hospital gown. He stared, rapt at the interplay of muscles as she rode his brother. At the edges of self-control, Jason pressed to Samara's back. She went still for a moment and he held his breath. Had they pushed her too far too fast? Samara moaned and pressed back against him, swiveling her hips. James moved closer, and she stroked up and down their erections. That's right, James whispered. Get used to the feeling of us. Yes. She breathed her reply into James's chin. She moved faster, grinding into them. Yes. Samara tensed, and her scent went straight to Jason's head. She shouted incoherently. She came. It was all Jason could do not to come in his jeans in response. Next time we'll be inside you, Jason promised. Samara nodded weakly, her head sinking toward James's chest. Do you want us to sleep with you? Jason offered. Please say yes. Another nod. Jason lowered her to the bed, then brushed a kiss across her lips. He lay down to her right, facing her on the wide bed. James did the same, then settled to her left. Samara cupped a hand over Jason's cock. By the way James tensed, Jason guessed. She did the same to his brother. Oh yes. She wants us. Not to mention she feels cooler. The knock on the door was undoubtedly Roberto again. It's unlikely to be news about Samara. Updates had already informed him that her fever had spiked dangerously high, but James and Jason had brought it down again. The latest reports were that she was past the danger of complications. Her breathing, heart rate, and the swelling in her arm all greatly improved, and sleeping soundly with her mates. That means it's Marcus's answer. I need to hear it, whatever it is. But he admitted to himself that the idea of killing one or more of his pack members exhausted him. Yes. Marcus has returned, Sebastian. Show him up. Sebastian went through the formality of moving to his desk. Roberto showed Marcus in and closed the door behind him. One look at the younger wolf gave testament to the fact that Marcus's evening had been no less stressful than his own. Marcus took a step toward the desk and held out a small wooden chest to him. My sincerest apologies, Alpha. He took it carefully, set it on his desk, then opened it. Inside were another 3 hunter's fangs along with what appeared to be a similar weapon shaped as a set of brass knuckles with a smaller blade at the far end. Dear goddess! Sebastian choked the words out, past the lump in his throat, and the stomach acid rising. Marcus went to his knees. My daughter assures me that is all of them, but I will have everything of my father searched again to make sure there are not more hiding places we have missed. I have also alerted my sister to do the same. He raised his face to look at Sebastian. She didn't know what they were. By the night mother, she could have killed herself with a nick of the blade. He took in a deep but halting breath. Christiana gave me everything and let me determine what was a hunter's weapon and what was not. I fear other young wolves may not know any more than Christiana did. Who knows how many are in danger and don't know it? Sebastian nodded wearily. I have already told Pietro and the other alpha maestros to have a required class about it this week, and I will be making another proclamation on the matter. We await your judgment, Alpha. I don't have the heart to kill them. Admitting it made him feel weak. Take your daughter home. Search for more weapons. Spread the word that anyone caught with hunter's fangs from this day forth will face death for it. My daughter will live. So will yours. This time, he let the threat hang between them. There will never be another incident, Marcus vowed. Thank you, Alpha. Your consideration is more than I dared hope for. Go on. It has been a long night for all of us. He scrambled to his feet, bowed, then made his way to the door. The nod he sent before he walked out let Sebastian know he'd won the loyalty of Marcus's line as long as they remembered this day.